Okay, it tells me I'm live. It is the Panther-Lair Podcast, our first live stream of the Panther-Lair Podcast, and welcome. You can actually see me now. If you listen to the podcast, you probably, I don't know if this is what you imagined it to look like or not, but here's where the magic happens. Microphone, laptop in front of me. You can't see the laptop. Wall behind me. And a little, sense of what we're doing here. So we're going to live stream the podcast. The plan is to try and do this. Obviously we release a podcast every week on Wednesdays, and so the plan is to live stream, for better or for worse, on Tuesday nights. Record the podcast at night, but live stream it. And this isn't just so you can see me. This isn't about put a face to the voice. It's a lot of I'm sure it's a lot of fun to actually see me. But I mean, it's not about that. What it's about is it gives us an opportunity to interact a little bit more. You can see on the screen. I'm not even going to point because the screen I'm looking at is backward. I don't know which side of the screen the comment section is for you. But you can comment on the live stream as it happens so we can interact. You have a question about Pitt football or basketball or recruiting. You have a comment or a reaction to, something I say or obviously something I get wrong. Those corrections, you can actually forward the corrections to the corrections department. I'll give that email address later or not at all. But it gives us a chance to kind of go back and forth. And who knows, maybe down the road we incorporate Skype into it and make it a bit of a call-in show, and we can get on the phone and, talk about Pitt sports, make it a little bit of a call-in show, and it'll still function as the podcast. It'll still be the Panther-Lair Show, and it'll be available for download on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts or wherever we make the podcast available. And you can check it out, that way too. But you'll have a chance to listen. And I want to thank everybody who's already online. I can see you guys commenting in, and Stashy just said he hoped he didn't miss the first gulp of beer. My friend, you did not. And this is another part of the live stream experience, is we're going to have a cold one. And tonight, I've talked about this one before. This is the Hemperor. And as soon as you open it, you can smell why it's called the Hemperor. It's a hemp pale ale from New Belgium. I've talked about New Belgium a million times on this podcast. You know that I heartily endorse their products, and the Hemperor is certainly one. It's I wouldn't say it's an acquired taste, but it takes a little getting used to. It's not what you're used to when you pick up a pale ale or an IPA or something like that. But it's good. I've come to really enjoy it. I've come to really like it. And there may be a few of you out there tonight. And again, hi to everybody who's chatting. I appreciate all the chat. If you guys have a question or something, you can post it there. But I appreciate everybody who's checking in. And I got to think a lot of people are interested to start off with the most notable topic of the day, right? And it's probably the reason quite a few of you may be drinking or enjoying hemp in some other forms on this evening. And it's the news that Mark Dantonio is retiring. And it's not that you have strong emotional ties to Mark Dantonio in the Michigan State program. It's that your first reaction was what everyone's first reaction was, is that Pat Narduzzi is going to go to Michigan State. Now, I'll dial back the clock a little bit. I'll run it back 5 years to, sitting there watching, I think I was watching ESPN, or it might have been, paying attention to Twitter or something like that. And you're sitting there and just, just paying attention. There it pops across. Gary Anderson's leaving Wisconsin. And there was it hit you instantly in that moment. When you heard that Gary Anderson was leaving Wisconsin, you said, oh dear Lord, there goes Paul Chryst. Because it was obvious. There was a clear and obvious connection. He was from Wisconsin. He went to Wisconsin. He coached at Wisconsin for the entire, for his whole career. Thank you, Roman. You say on the chat, Chris Peak is better than State of the Union. I'll hold my hand like this as often as I can. I'm trying not to rock the desk and make the computer shake, so you don't have a shaky screen and whatnot. But you knew that Paul Chryst was immediately at the top of the list. It didn't matter that he was 6-6 and 6-7. It didn't matter that this was at the end of a season where he lost to Akron, where he was losing, he had the Duke game and the Georgia Tech game. It didn't matter that they had lost to Youngstown State 2 years earlier. None of those things matter. You knew that Paul Chryst was going to be the guy for Barry Alvarez at Wisconsin. You knew that was an automatic. It's not the automatic with Michigan State and Pat Narduzzi. It seems like the obvious choice. It seems like the obvious option when Pat Narduzzi spent so long coaching at Michigan State. When he came up with Mark Dantonio, going back to Cincinnati and then Michigan State, he spent a lot of time there. And I mean that's the program that he's had. That's a program where he spent most of his career. He's getting to a point now at Pitt where he's almost been at Pitt as long as he was at Michigan State, but he's not quite there yet. And so it became obvious, and you saw it all over the place. As soon as Dantonio announced that he was resigning, it was fans talking about it. It was Bruce Feldman, I saw, threw the name out there. Other reporters throughout the ACC were saying, well, Narduzzi would seem to be an obvious choice. And it's a gut reaction, knee-jerk reaction. But I'm telling you, as I've heard it said today, it's not there. It's not happening on a number of levels. And I think you can look at it from the Pat Narduzzi side, and you can look at it from the Michigan State side. And before I go any further, you got to understand, there's always the caveat with any of these things, where we're talking about coaching changes, or we're talking about recruiting, or we're talking about anything like that. Nothing's ever 100%. Nothing is ever 100%. Even when a paper is signed, it's not 100%. And there are examples all over the place of that being the case. So when I sit here and say it's not going to happen with Pat Narduzzi, it absolutely could happen, because anything could happen. I could wake up tomorrow, with the carpet stapled to my forehead. It's possible. It's unlikely, but it's possible. Anything can happen, but I'm telling you, I think if you look at it from both sides, I don't necessarily see it. Right now, so which side do you want to start from? You start from Michigan State's side, or you start from Pat Narduzzi's side? I think you start from Pat Narduzzi's side, and you look at it, and yes, he's got a lot of history at Michigan State. I think he enjoyed a lot of the things that Michigan State had to offer. I think he enjoyed a lot of what the Big Ten had to offer. I think he, I think there's certain things that go along with being in the Big Ten and being at Michigan State that, that you don't necessarily have at Pitt, whether it's fan support or, the game day atmosphere, the kind of, games that you're going to be playing in, and all those things that go along with. I mean, we know the differences between the Big Ten and the ACC. We know the difference between Michigan State and Pitt, and I think there are probably parts of that Pat Narduzzi longs for a little bit. The ability to be able to practice on your home stadium field anytime you want, instead of being limited to certain opportunities, which is the case, and it's one of the downfalls, one of the few downfalls that come with sharing facilities with the Steelers. I think Pat Narduzzi probably longs for some of those things, but I think if you look at it from Pat Narduzzi's perspective, he's worked long and hard to build something at Pitt. He's put in a lot of time. Obviously, over the last 5 years, he's spent trying to build this program into something. And right now, and we could go a long way down the road of trying to discuss what's going to happen for Pitt this year, or where the program really is, but he's got it to a point where they just might be on the cusp of really accomplishing something. He's built the defense up to what he wants it to be, as good as it ever was at Michigan State, you would think. He obviously needs a little bit of improvement from the offense. That's a mantra we've repeated many times over so far this offseason. We'll keep saying it over and over and over throughout the offseason, and we'll certainly say it through the season that he's got to improve the offense a little bit to get it to where it's supposed to be, but he's put a lot of time in, and it's finally starting to get there. I'm not sure if I see Narduzzi as the kind of guy who would want to bail on it just quite yet. I think he wants to have some success with what he's doing. And, to some extent, if you're Pat Narduzzi and if you had the opportunity to go to Michigan State, and you were to go to Michigan State, what are you going to where's the bar for accomplishment? Because you've already done a lot at Michigan State. You know what I mean? Narduzzi with Dantonio and the staff and the players they had there, they won the Big Ten, right? They won the Rose Bowl, right? They made the college football playoffs, right? You're going to have to go there and get back to that level and achieve at a higher level, because even if you just get back to the college football playoffs, think about this. If you're Pat Narduzzi and you go back to Michigan State, and again, I mean, we're going way down the road of hypotheticals here, but if you're Pat Narduzzi and you go back to Michigan State, what do you have to shoot for? Like how high are you going to have to shoot? You're going to have to, just making the playoffs means you've gotten it back to where it was the last time you were there. And that means you have to go even further. And I don't think he shies away from, ambition or shies away from goals or lofty, aspirations. But to some extent, he's kind of already, it was 90s day at the Pitt on Sunday for the basketball game, right? So Narduzzi, to some extent, with Michigan State, has already been there and done that. Whereas at Pitt, he's got an opportunity to do something new. He's got an opportunity to do something different. He's got an opportunity to have some different kind of success, and really forge a new trail, blaze a new trail, and, build something at Pitt, like I say, and really kind of go where no coach at Pitt has been before him, dating back to the early 1980s. You've got some success, you've got a clear path there, I think. And then I think if you look at it from Michigan State side, we're getting some nice questions coming in on the chat. We're going to get to this in a second. I appreciate you guys chiming in out there. We're going to get to you in a second. I think I can scroll back through the chat. I got the chat screen up here. Yeah, we'll roll back through these questions too. I appreciate you chiming in. But I think if you look at it also from the Michigan State side, right? They're not exactly, Mark Dantonio is not exactly riding off into the sunset here. Going out on a high note. He's not finishing his time in East Lansing under the best of circumstances, or leaving the program in the. Well, I can't say where he's leaving the program, but look, it's been a rough stretch on and off the field for Mark Dantonio in recent years at Michigan State. I think if you're hiring a new coach at Michigan State, you're probably looking for something different, right? You're not exactly, and I'm not saying that Narduzzi is a Dantonio retread, but I mean, there's a lot of similarities. There's a lot of overlap. And I don't know if you're necessarily looking for the same guy again. You're not looking to do the same things again. And I think that's kind of what you would what you would be looking for out of Pat Narduzzi. Or if you hired Pat Narduzzi, I think that would kind of be the idea. You know what I mean? You're not hiring a Dantonio clone, but it's close enough that people would probably feel like it is. So, I mean, I think they're going to look to strike out in a different direction. Now, I mean, yeah, if Narduzzi's here and he's winning 10 games a year at Pitt, then maybe they have a different perspective on things, but that hasn't been the case either. So you boil all these factors together, and it just doesn't line up. It just doesn't seem like the kind of thing that would happen if you ask me. I don't think there's any. I just don't see it happening. But of course, like I say, his name is going to be the first name that gets bounced out there, and it's obvious. Luke Fickell's name is also out there, and I think he makes a world of sense for Cincinnati, for Michigan State, and I think Michigan State makes a world of sense for Luke Fickell. If you're Luke Fickell, you will. I mean, I presume, I don't know the man personally, but I presume you're looking for a Big Ten job. Well, Ohio State's not coming open anytime soon, right? Michigan, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen there. Wisconsin's not coming open anytime soon. Penn State is probably not coming open. I mean, we can all talk about whatever we want, but I mean, they're doing okay there, and I don't think that's going to be coming open. So what is your real, what are your real opportunities going to be to get into the Big Ten? Michigan State's a pretty good situation, I think, for Luke Fickell. If you're him and you have that opportunity, I think you would want to look for it. All right, going to run down the comments here. James Green, hi Chris, hi James, nice to see you. Rolling down, Andrew Callahan, is Dude's going to leave us? I mean, that's kind of what we've been talking about. I don't think he is. Let's see. I thought there was another question. Timothy Fairley, thanks for chiming in here, buddy. Are you expecting both of the recent Pat signals to announce and sign tomorrow? Yeah, I am. We're going to talk about recruiting in a little bit, talk about the guys that are probably the most likely possibilities for that. Those last two spots, there was a commitment on Monday, a commitment on Tuesday. Of course, a little plug here. If you were on Panther-Lair.com on Monday morning, we saw my post about, is there a potential for 2 more additions to this recruiting class? And, look, shortly after that, within about 24 hours, or 2 new commitments. I mean, just Panther-Lair.com. Might just throw it out. Oh, look, you can see the name right there. You like that? You like that? We're figuring out what we want to do, which way. I got photos up there, got the front page of the website down there, site logo here. We're going to try and, get the subscribe button on and get a direct link to the website, which, by the way, subscribe on YouTube if you don't mind. If you're just listening to the podcast, you're not watching the live stream, you can go to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, C-O-M. One word, Panther-Lair.com. You can go there and subscribe. We appreciate the subscribers. That'll help kind of show what we're doing is being appreciated. So the website, Panther-Lair.com, that's not a link. That's just a picture, but I'm going to try and turn it into a link. Again, we're learning a lot of the technology on the fly here. I think this is all working as we go. But yeah, if you were on the website, you saw that we talked about 2 potential additions to the class, and sure enough, 2 commitments came in. We'll talk about those guys in a second. I do want to talk about recruiting here in a minute. Rolling down, I thought there were some more questions in here. Let me see. Let's see. Steeler Y360 Nation says, I don't think Deuce is leaving for MSU. Kirby Brubaker says, I think Michigan State will go younger. I think, probably a guy like Luke Fickell would make the most sense. Charles Tomarello has been in there. Great live show. Thank you, Charles, for chiming. Mark Cerny, do you think Pitt can win 10+ next year? Boy, that's $1 million question, isn't it? Let's see. I mean, we've broken this down a lot of different ways, I think. I think I've broken down the schedule so far. I did it in a mailbag column on Tuesday morning. I'm going to say Tuesday morning in case you're listening to the podcast. It's not to date ourselves too much. But, brief overview. You got to win the first 3, okay, to go 3-0. You need to beat Duke, Syracuse, and Georgia Tech. I know Duke and Syracuse tend to be a close game each year, but really there's no reason Pitt should lose either of those games. The only time they've lost to Syracuse was in 2017. Duke, really the last 2 years, really the last 3 years, even Darren Hall's outburst game in 2017, they were all one-score games. They were close games. You still should beat Duke. I mean, that should be 6-0 right there. I mean, you should have 6 wins off the first 3 games, the Richmond, Marshall, and Miami of Ohio, and then the 3 games, the Duke, Syracuse, and Georgia Tech games. I mean, you should have 6 wins right there. And to be honest, I mean, Virginia should be a win in 2020. It really should. The key with Virginia last year, Bryce Perkins was okay. I mean, he's a decent quarterback, but he wasn't the reason they won. They won because Pitt's offense was god-awful. They turned the ball over too much. And I think if you avoid that, I mean, you could say that about a couple of games. I mean, look at the Virginia Tech game. The Virginia Tech game always cracks me up because it was 28-0. They think, people talk about Virginia Tech being so far above Pitt because they blew them out 28-0. And I understand that. It was a blowout. What are you going to do? Virginia Tech had like 263 yards of offense. Was that a dominating performance? Oh, they've got that quarterback back. Well, yeah, good. He couldn't even get their offense to get 300 yards against Pitt. That game, again, just like the Virginia, not just like the Virginia game, but similar in a lot of ways to the Virginia game. The game was lost with the offense playing really poorly and turning the ball over and making mistakes. Hey, you've listened to the podcast before. You know how I feel about those correctable mistakes, right? Drop passes, fumbles, interceptions, and what's the other one? Oh, procedure penalties. Oh, yes. Procedure penalties. Coach Hammock, Chris, you need a media drop back with the Panther-Lair logo. You're not wrong. You're not wrong about that. And I've actually looked into it once, and I get freaking Facebook ads about banner logos, like backdrops, all the time now. It's the worst thing. But it's better than getting all the ads about, stain-resistant pants or whatever else I search or look for. No, but coming back to the schedule for a second, I mean, Virginia, and they lost Bryce Perkins, right? So even though that game is down there, I don't see a reason Pitt shouldn't win that game. Pitt has been pretty much better than Virginia every year since they joined the ACC. I don't think Virginia was that much better than Pitt last year. Pitt's offense just the bed against Virginia, right? And that blew that game. So, I mean, in theory, unless you have something go horribly wrong in one of those games, and you can't rule that possibility out. We know that. Unless you have something go horribly wrong in one of those games, you should have 7 wins right there, right? And that leaves Notre Dame, Florida State, Virginia Tech, Miami, and North Carolina. And yeah, I wrote this in my mailbag column on Tuesday morning. I think on the message board there was a conversation about the schedule, and I put this in there. Notre Dame's your toughest game on the schedule. All right, whatever's going to happen there is going to happen. Pitt always plays them close. You never really know how those games are going to go. It's the toughest game on the schedule. I don't know what that game is going to be. Florida State. What's Florida State going to be in Mike Norvell's first year? I don't know. That leaves 3 games. Virginia Tech, Miami, North Carolina. Those are the swing games. Those are the games that are going to decide whether this season is a 9-win season or a 10-win season or a 7-win season. Those games are going to be the difference. And I think it's going to be really tough to win all 3 of those games, but I think you should be able to get at least 2. I think you should be able to go at least 2-1 in those 3 games. And each one of those has unique backstories, and each one of those games has different storylines that we're going to talk about a lot between now and then. Whether it's North Carolina's offense and whether Pitt's offense can score enough to keep up with North Carolina's offense, or whether it's, just Miami can get over that hump against Miami. There again, another game the offense lost. Or whether it's, Virginia Tech, and whether, if that series is going to swing back to Pitt after it, the momentum went to the Hokies in this last game. Those 3 games are really going to decide it. So, I mean, can Pitt, let me see what that question was, how exactly he asked that. Mark Cerny said, do I think Pitt can win 10-plus games this year? Yes, Pitt can. Do I think Pitt will? Need a drink. Let's go on to another question. Whoops, clicked the wrong button. I hope I didn't disable the stream. I didn't disable the stream. I know I didn't. I have the pop-out chat enabled, so I clicked over too far. Let's see here. Royce Beacom says, "Why doesn't Pitt have a real Pitt guy?" I mean, I thought we might have been past that point. Remember when they hired Dave Wanstead, and there was talk about did they? No, they didn't talk about Russ Grimm then, but there was always talk about a Pitt guy. I guess Terrell Austin's name would still come up from time to time when they hired Paul Christ or Todd Graham. I think even a little bit people mentioned it when they hired Pat Narduzzi. They mentioned Terrell Austin's name as a Pitt guy. It's what you need to bring in as a Pitt guy. I think, Todd Orlando's name comes up every now and then, more as a coordinator than as a head coach. He's sort of a local guy. But, I mean, what's important is that you have a personality that can mesh and appeal to locals, be relatable to locals, whether it's charisma or whether it's whatever it is. You don't have to say yins and talk about fish sandwiches all the time to get on just fine here. You have to be able to win. Number one, you have to win. And then you have to, you do have to be a little bit relatable. You do have to be kind of one of the people, so to speak. And I think Pat Narduzzi kind of has that down, although I think his interactions with the media sometimes paint a different, paint a perspective that maybe rubs people the wrong way, or creates kind of a persona that rubs people the wrong way. I just happened to notice, by the way, you can see what goes on in the Panther-Lair Podcast. Sunbowl hoodie. That's right. This business is all about building credibility. Okay, you have to have credibility. There has to be a reason that people listen to your podcast or watch your live stream or read your articles or follow you on Twitter or whatever it is, because they believe that you're a credible reporter. You know what I mean? You're going to talk about something like, is Pat Narduzzi going to go to Michigan State? Well, you need to have credibility. What's more credible than flying 9 hours or however freaking long it took to fly to El Paso and standing a few feet away from the border to watch Pitt play Stanford? Yeah, that's credibility, Holmes. And it's did I wear this on purpose? Maybe. Zach W. asks, opinion on Pitt having a Friday night home game. It was probably a beautiful dream that Pitt could get away with never playing on a Friday night, never playing a home game on a Friday night. But, eventually it was going to happen. There was no way to avoid it. You were eventually going to play a Friday night home game. I thought they could maybe pull it off and just never have one, but eventually the ACC made it happen. So sorry for shaking the table there, but yeah, you're eventually going to have one of those games. I know you don't want to, but eventually it was going to happen. And now they don't have a Thursday night game, so it's a little different. Roman says I need a computer chair. You can see my fine furniture behind me. Well, look, you're going to get the inside look at the Panther-Lair Podcast here. You're going to see behind the curtain, so to speak, and for better or for worse, and that's part of the worst. But, what are you going to do? Paul Moore says, on to Green 19 says, have you gotten any feedback from Jeffers since the unofficial visit? He's talking about Will Jeffers. Big-time prospect in Erie. He's a guy in the 2021 recruiting class, so he's a junior in high school, but he's looking to reclassify into the potentially going to reclassify into the 2020 recruiting class. Seems like everything's pointing in that direction, and if and when he does reclassify into the 2020 recruiting class, he's most likely going to end up at Pitt. I mean, there's some ifs in there. There's some things you have to wait for. If this happens, and if this happens, and if this happens. But if all those things happen, is going to work out really well for Pitt. Haven't gotten much feedback. He was at the game on Sunday. Haven't gotten much feedback from him since then. But, I mean, everything we hear, all the indications we have is that things are looking good for those, boom, boom, boom to fit out, to work out in Pitt's favor. Paul Moore asks thoughts on the new strength and conditioning hire. Does he know part of his job is keeping dudes on the sideline and off the field during terrible penalties? Interestingly, we're actually going to talk Mike Stacchiotti, I believe is how it's pronounced. We're going to talk to him on Wednesday. Wednesday afternoon, we're going to have a little press conference with Mike Stacchiotti and get a chance to talk to him for the first time. And that'll be one of the questions. And actually, we're going to talk to Pat Narduzzi as well. So that'll be interesting. We'll get to ask him about Michigan State and how that, if that... Sorry. You also get to see me looking at my phone when I get a notification that one of the recruits Pitt is after just tweeted that he's going to be announcing his commitment at 10 a.m. on Wednesday morning. Was I saying Stacchiotti? Oh, yeah, one of the questions for him and for Pat Narduzzi is whether he's going to take on that role of the get-back coach for Pat Narduzzi, which was certainly one of Dave Andrews' more important roles. Although I thought Narduzzi got more reserved over the years. I mean, those first couple years, 15, 16, the Virginia Tech game in 2016, Pat Narduzzi was a little bit out of control at the sidelines, and he needed Dave Andrews pulling him back in. Mark Cerny, another question. If Joey Yellen can win his NCAA appeal, do you think he has a chance to upend Kenny Pickett? This is an interesting question. So Joey Yellen, the redshirt freshman quarterback transfer from Arizona State, is coming in trying to appeal to the NCAA to get eligible, to get a waiver to be eligible to play this season. And it's interesting because when the news came out that they were applying for a waiver, I think the first thought was, do they want him to start? Are they trying to get him to be the starting quarterback? And I think they'll always take the competition. Look, if anybody who goes out there, if Davis Bevel is better in practice and has a better grasp of the offense than Kenny Pickett, then that's the quarterback they'll go with. If Nick Patty is better, then that's the quarterback they'll go with. And if Joey Yellen is eligible and he is better than Kenny Pickett, he'll be the one they go with. I really believe that. I think the coaches will play the guys who give them the best chance to win. With Yellen and the waiver, I think some people took that to mean that they're really trying to get him eligible so he can beat out Kenny Pickett because they don't believe in Kenny Pickett. And I don't think that's entirely the case. I think they're applying for the waiver because at this point in time, with the way the NCAA is, with the way college athletics are, football and basketball, if you get a transfer and you don't apply for a waiver, you're kind of, it's dereliction of duty, really, because the NCAA is giving out waivers so often and so unpredictably these days and kind of so inconsistently these days, you have to apply for a waiver because you just might get one. And why would they want Joey Yellen to be eligible this year? Well, he's already used his red shirt. He used it last year. So you're not going to waste that opportunity. And it gives you another arm you can put on the field. Maybe he's not better than Kenny Pickett. Maybe he's not going to win that starting job away from Kenny Pickett. But when you size up the other two guys against him, Patty and Bevel, maybe he's a better option than them. And then he can become your backup if he's eligible and he's available to play. It gives you another scholarship arm you can put on the field, which is a good thing. And I think that's why they're trying to, which is why I think they're trying to get a waiver and get him eligible. Stephen Case asked, what was the correctable mistake count at? And we kept that running total throughout the season. It was dropped passes, it was interceptions, it was fumbles, either recovered or lost, because there's still a negative play if you fumble. Even if you recover it, it's a negative play. And then and the procedure penalties on offense. And I gotta be honest, I mean, I forget what the final total ended up being. It was well over 100. I think it was 100 plus just going into the Eastern Michigan game, and they certainly had a few of those issues in that game. It was, like I say, there were correctable mistakes. I think correctable is the key word there, and that was what really sunk the offense. I think it was what really held the offense back throughout the season. And I talked about it all year long, all fall. I talked about it, before the bowl game, after the bowl game, and put a lot of the issues this offense had, and a lot of the, by extension, a lot of the issues this team had. For those listening on the podcast, I just bumped the table. That's why I apologize to the viewers who are keeping an eye out here. A lot of the issues came from those correctable mistakes, and they have to get better at it. They have to clean it up next year. They simply have to clean it up. Scrolling down through the comments here, we really appreciate. I really do appreciate you guys checking this out. We'll go a little bit longer here. No set time on the podcast. If you listen to the podcast, sometimes it's a half hour, sometimes it's 45 minutes, sometimes it's an hour. Anywhere in between. So I mean, we'll run through some more comments and see what else we have to talk about, and then we'll wrap it up. But let me see. Charles Tomarello, horrible weather that day in Blacksburg, driving rainstorm. It was terrible weather, and it made their decision to throw the ball as often as they did even more curious in that Virginia Tech game. Rolling down through, Nicholas Timperio has a couple comments. Pitt's defense will keep them in every game, and improved offense gives a chance for 10 wins. I absolutely agree with you, Nicholas. I mean, yeah, I think their defense is going to be really good, and they should they should win. Their defense should keep them in the games, and it'll come down to whether or not they can score enough to win. Because, I mean, there wasn't a single loss this team took in 2019 that you would blame the defense. Not one. I mean, the Miami game, they gave up a touchdown drive at the worst possible time. They allowed 16 points. I'm not going to blame a defense that gives up that many points. The Eastern Michigan game, yeah, if they had lost that game, that would have been on them. But, hey, the offense came through and they won the game. And the defense made some big stops at the end. I'm not going to blame the defense for the Boston College game. They give up 26. You hold a team under 30, you should win the game every time. I'm not going to blame them for the Virginia Tech game. None of it. You can't put a single loss on the defense. And in 2020, I'm guessing it's going to be the same thing. So you need the offense to get a little bit better. They don't have to be great. They have to be a little bit better. You can win a bunch of games. And then Nicholas also asked which D linemen or candidates to move to the offensive line. Ruben that Bryce Nelms was moved. I wouldn't be surprised. I think he was a guy that we circled as a potential offensive tackle from the time he was getting recruited. And I wouldn't be surprised if that move happened. I think the coaches kind of eyeballed that as a potential move during his recruitment as well. And, if that move is, I don't know if that move has happened. If it has, I wouldn't be surprised at all. And I think it's a good move. I think it could work out well for him. Ian Sowers says, what kind of flight did you take that took 9 hours to get to Texas? Panther-Lair needs a bigger budget. We do need a bigger budget. There's no question about that. So subscribe to Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com. Looks like that. Whoop, there. Looks like that. Magic of technology. Subscribe to Panther-Lair.com and get the Panther-Lair budget up. Now, it might not have been 9 hours, but I flew through O'Hare, and it might have been like 7 hours total. Because it was like I don't know if it was a 5-hour flight from O'Hare to El Paso, but it was a long flight from Chicago to El Paso. So that was quite a while. Stephen Case had it worse, though. He says, my trip to El Paso took 13 hours with 3 canceled flights. So worse for you. Michael Vranisevich? Might have got your name right. If I didn't, I apologize. Who do you like the most, and who do you think has the most potential out of the 2020 recruits? So this is an interesting question. And I think this will be, this is one we've talked about a bit through the fall, and certainly around the last signing day. And this was part of the reason, actually, that I wanted to do this live stream tonight, was because the second signing day is on Wednesday. I wanted to talk about that. I thought we would spend most of this time on this podcast and live stream talking about signing day coming up. I didn't think Mark Dantonio was going to resign in the middle of the day on Tuesday. So I thought we would talk about recruiting. I thought we would talk about the recruiting class and who they signed and who they're going to add and who these 2 other commitments are and all those kinds of things. And instead, here we are. We're talking about Mark Dantonio, and you guys had some great questions too. So, I mean, I got a little distracted with that. But, Michael, I definitely have been on the I've been banging the drum for Jordan Addison, the wide receiver out of Maryland, for a long time. I think he's going to be a special player at Pitt. I think he's got the potential to be a special player at Pitt. He enrolled early. He's already on campus. So he's got that going for him, where he's going to have that extra time in the strength program, and he's going to have that extra time in spring camp, where he's going to be able to work with the coaches and get comfortable working with Kenny Pickett. I think he can really contribute in 2020. I think he's going to contribute in 2020, and I think he's going to make a really positive contribution in 2020. I like Izzy Abanaconda too, the running back. I think another guy who's enrolled early at a position where they need help. And I mean, that's the case with both of those offensive skill spots, receiver and running back. They could use another guy. They could use a couple more guys to step in and really be good players. And I'm bullish on these receivers. I know I spent so much time talking about dropped passes and correctable mistakes, but I mean, look, I think Taysier Mack has a lot. I think he can do good things. You know what I mean? He can go downfield and fight and make contested catches, make those tough catches. I think Jared Wayne showed at the end of the season what kind of potential he's got. I think Shockey Jacques Louis can step into the Maurice French role and be that guy who catches 100 passes next season. I like that trio as your top 3 receivers, and I think you add Jordan Addison into it, and Jalen Barton, the wide receiver out of Georgia, who's coming in this summer, and I think that's a really good 5. And you're not really even talking about Dontavius Butler-Jenkins yet, or you're not talking about Michael Smith, or I don't know if Trey Tipton's coming back. I mean, there are other receivers on this roster, but I think those 5, if that's your top 5, I think you're in really good shape. Sorry. This happens during the podcast, but you can't see me checking my phone. You might hear me pause, but I like to think that I like to imagine that you think when I pause, I'm doing it either for dramatic effect or to really collect my thoughts and make a good, important point. But usually I'm just checking my phone because my phone buzzes, because I have notifications turned on for like 58 recruits and more people that I don't need notifications for, but I get them anyway. So those 2 guys, really 3, Addison, Barton, and Abanaconda, I think are going to be really good. I like Dayon Hayes out of Westinghouse. I think is going to be a really good college defensive end. I think he's going to be really good for this team. The linebackers, I think, is a really good group of linebackers. Solomon DeShields and A.J. Roberts and Bengali Kamara. Really, those 3 guys are going to be able to make an impact. Maybe not soon, because I think they've got some okay depth at linebacker, but they've got some good players returning at linebacker who should be able to fill those roles. I think that's a good group as well. And then, we'll see what the defensive backs can do. And this defensive back group is probably going to include Rashad Battle. And I mentioned him. He's a big corner prospect, and I mentioned him because he took an official visit to Pitt over the weekend, and he was here Friday to Sunday, and then there have been 2 commitments this week. There's 1 commitment on Monday, 1 commitment on Tuesday, and really there were 2 guys we were circling as potential additions to the class. One was Rashad Battle, the cornerback prospect, and then a 4-star prospect, I should add, and then the other was Ben Sauls, a kicker from Ohio. And we've written a little bit about Ben Saul's story. Pitt was really high on him. They had him on campus for an unofficial visit a couple weeks ago, and they liked him. What they wanted him to do was join the team as a walk-on, be a walk-on next fall while he redshirts, and then go on scholarship in January after Alex Kessman finishes his eligibility. And that's kind of the path that Kessman took. His first year, 18, 19, 20. His first year was 2016. He was a freshman in 2016. He redshirted while Chris Blewett was a senior, and he was a walk-on. And then once Blewett finished his eligibility in 2016, Kessman went on scholarship in January. He's been on scholarship ever since. So they wanted this Ben Sauls, this kicker from Ohio, to do the same thing. Everything was heading in that direction. It was all going well. And then Iowa State got in the mix, and he committed to Iowa State. And as of this recording, as we sit here at 9:10 p.m. on Tuesday, February 4th, Sauls is still publicly, formally committed to Iowa State. Well, on Friday or maybe Saturday, somewhere around there, after he committed to Iowa State, Pat Narduzzi called him up and said, look, we want you on a full scholarship, and made a move on Ben Sauls to get him to come to Pitt. Now, these are the two guys that we have our eyes. We've been watching for the last 48, 72 hours, Rashad Battle and Ben Sauls. In that time, there have been two new commitments, as yet unannounced by the recruits themselves. We're adding up 2 and 2 and saying that those two are probably Rashad Battle and Ben Sauls, because there aren't really any other names that are out there that we're keeping an eye on. So if it's somebody else, it's going to be a name completely out of left field. It's going to be, I can't even say it's going to be a Servassier Dennis, because he was a name out of left field until we confirmed that he was on campus for an official visit, and then we knew about him by the time he committed. This would be a name we don't know anything about by the time they commit. So we're expecting it to be Rashad Battle and Ben Sauls. Those would be the final two additions to the class. I don't see anything interfering with that, and those guys should both sign their letters of intent tomorrow with Pitt and officially join the class. And I think those guys will be a good addition. Sauls gets a chance to redshirt, learn under Kessman for a year. Assuming he comes to Pitt, he gets to redshirt, learn under Kessman for a year, and then be the man, presumably, for the next 4 years after that. Oh my goodness, there's so many questions. You guys killed it. I appreciate this. You guys are doing awesome. I really appreciate you guys watching the live stream. This is great. And if you're listening to the podcast and you have a question, or you want to react to it, get in next week when we do this live stream on Tuesday night. We'll do it again at 8:30. This is a good time for it, as long as it doesn't interfere with a basketball game. And I think Tuesdays are pretty clear. 11. Oh no, they play at Florida State. Come on, Pitt. 2 weeks from now, they play at Florida State at 8 o'clock. All right, we'll figure something out. Maybe we'll do it 7:30 to 8:30 or something like that. 7 to 8 or something. I appreciate everybody who's here. I see somebody just said they had to come here. They couldn't take listening to the president anymore. But let's go to a few more questions. Roman, you've been in here since the stream started, man. I appreciate you. Say, what's higher next season, correctable mistakes or tight end receiving yards? Hardy, har. Tight ends are going to catch more passes next year. I think Lucas Krull is going to do a nice job. And I think – sorry, I'm going to put my phone – I can't really put it away, but there's things things are happening. You know what I mean? I keep looking at my phone because getting direct messages about things about Pitt recruiting, because this is what happens. When you follow recruiting, you kind of cover recruiting, you get these messages all the time. I think Lucas Krull is going to be a really nice addition, the grad transfer from Florida. I think he's going to be a really nice addition to this passing game, to the tight end room. I think he's going to play really well for them and put up some decent numbers. And so they'll have more tight end receiving yards than they had correctable mistakes. They had more tight end receiving yards than correctable mistakes last year, so don't be so silly. Stashy says, how do you see the line progressing? Does the pass block and running game improve? So, I'm going to talk about offensive line. I need a drink. Get some Hemper. This stuff, I like this stuff. I've heard some people say they don't care for it that much, and I can understand why you wouldn't, but because, like I say, it's a unique flavor. It doesn't taste like another IPA. It doesn't taste like a pale ale or anything like that. It tastes like hemp. You smell it. You smell it as soon as you crack it. It smells more like beer as you drink it down. That first crack, though, you say, what is that? It's good, though. I really like it. So, Stashy, how do I see the offensive line improving? here's the thing I'm counting on with Pitt's offensive line in 2020. All the guys they're bringing back got a lot of experience last year. Carter Warren, Bryce Hargrove, obviously Jimmy Morrissey. You know him. You can rely on him. He's a rock. Gabe Hoy, Jake Cradle, Carson Van Lint. You lose Nolan Alicio. He's the only starter you lost from the offensive line, but then you talk about correctable mistakes, and he had a few. He did it his way, all right. So you're returning a bunch of these guys with experience. And look, any coach will tell you that experience is a huge factor for offensive linemen. You've actually been on the field. These guys, you work together with other guys. You get comfortable with them. And that's kind of the biggest thing they have going for them right now, is that they've all got experience. Whereas they didn't really have a lot of experience last year. Carter Warren, first-year starter. Bryce Hargrove, first-year starter. Jake Cradle, first-year starter. Gabe Hoy, first-year starter. Carson Van Lint playing extended reps. He played a lot of snaps 2 years ago. He played a lot of snaps in 2018, lining up as a tight end. Well, last year he actually played offensive tackle a lot more. And all of that was happening really for the first time in their careers. Those guys hadn't seen that kind of workload at all since they came to Pitt. And they were pretty much all, Warren, Van Lint, Hoy, were all redshirt sophomores. Hargrove was a redshirt junior, and Cradle was a redshirt freshman. So, they were all kind of young and certainly green in terms of their experience. And so they've got that going for them this year, that they're going to be older and they're going to be more experienced. And if you want me to give you a reason on why they're going to be better this year, brother, I don't have anything else. That's all I got. I think they have some natural ability. I think there are some good players. I think they can be good, but I don't have anything to really sit here and tell you, here's why they're going to be much better. Here's what they showed that indicates that they're going to be a lot better in 2020 than they were in 2019. Because they didn't show much in 2019 to give you a feeling that they were going to be much better this year. But they have to be. They have to be. They could be the key to this team winning 7 or 10. That could be the difference, is how those guys play. And so you just have to hope that their experience helps out that much. Let's see. Kevin Isles wants to talk a little bit of Pitt basketball. Basketball has 9 games to go. Probably could win or lose any of them. How do you see them finishing up? Does 6-3 get them back to March? And I've looked a lot at this. I've talked a lot about this. They're at 14-8 right now. I think the realistic possibility. I think the best case scenario is they end up going, winning 19, probably going 19-12. I guess it would be, which would put them at 10-10 in the ACC. I think if you're Pitt, look, if they end up going 19-12 and 10-10, and they go to the ACC tournament and win a game to get to 20 wins, I think that's a pretty good season. Even and then they lose another game in the ACC tournament, they're 20-13. I think that's a pretty good season. Does that get them into the NCAA tournament? I don't know. I think that's tough. Just with the ACC being down, it hurts. The cases for everybody in this conference. That's why you see, people talking about, well, right now the ACC would only get 4 teams in. Well, there is some truth to the perception of this conference right now. And, if you're a team like Pitt and you're scraping to get to 20 wins in the conference tournament and you go 500 in the ACC, there are a lot of years where 500 in the ACC gets you in. As long as you have more than like 13 wins or something. If you've won 19 or 20 games, and you went 500 in the ACC, you would get in because that was a testament to the strength of your schedule and how well you play. But, I don't know if they're going to get the benefit of the doubt this year. But all right, if I tell you right now, look, this team's going to go 19-12 in the regular season. They're going to go 20-13 after the ACC tournament. That's what their record's going to be after the conference tournament, and they're going to go to the NIT. Would you take that? I would. I think that would be a pretty good season for this program, for this team. Charles Tomarello wants to know Paris Ford on offense for a few plays next year. Such a dynamic athlete. He needs to spend as much time on defense as he can. Paris Ford was amazing last year. He was dynamic. He was one of the most exciting players we've seen in a Pitt uniform in a long time, and he's got a whole lot he can do better than he did because he still made a lot of mistakes. As great as he was at times, he also made a lot of mistakes at times that really hurt the team. It really did. Gave up touchdowns. And this isn't to bash him. It just means he's got a lot he can improve on. So for me personally, rather than seeing him go spend practice time working with receivers or working with running backs or anything like that, I want him spending every possible rep working on defense, and learning his responsibilities and learning his duties and learning all of those things. That's what I would want him to do if I was the Pitt coaches, rather than putting him on defense for a few, or putting him on offense for a few plays, because you've got guys who can make plays on that side of the ball. Maybe he can. Maybe he's a game breaker there too. But I think Shockey Jacques Louis can make plays. I think Jordan Addison is going to be able to make plays. I think Vincent Davis can make plays. I think Jared Wayne can make plays. I think Taysir Mack can make plays. I think Izzy Abanaconda is going to be able to come in and make plays. They've got guys who can make plays on that side of the ball. They need Paris Ford to be just as good as he was last year and even better. He needs to be great. Nicholas Temperio says Hayes is going to be a monster. Hayes might be a monster, is what Nicholas says, talking about Dayon Hayes from Westinghouse. I think so, too. I think Dayon Hayes is going to be really good. One of the best City League players Pitt has gotten. Where you talk about him in the same breath as like a Rod Rutherford, as far as contributions from a guy coming from the City League. I think he can be really, really good. And if he is, just like I think DeMar Hamlin and Paris Ford's success has had an impact on how Pitt is viewed locally among recruits and high school players, Dayon Hayes can be that next guy. I think that's how important he can be. Zach W., potential breakout player next year. What would be a breakout player? That's a good question. That's a good question, Zach. Because I think, would you count? I think Jared Wayne already had a breakout, right? Shockey Jacques Louis is not a. Even if he catches 100 yards, has a career season, is it a breakout season? I think we kind of know who he is. I think he's already kind of broken out. I think Taysir Mack has broken out. I think Jared Wayne has broken out. I think you probably are, would you say Vincent Davis? But I mean, I think there again, I think he's broken out enough. So I would probably, offensively at least, it would probably have to be one of the freshmen. It would probably have to be, Izzy Abanaconda or Jordan Addison or potentially Jalen Barton. Defensively, breakout player. I'll tell you who could be defensive breakout player. Chase Pine. Keep him in mind. I think he's going to end up being the starting middle linebacker. I think he's got a great chance at that role. He's going to have some competition there from guys like Wendell Davis, potentially Brandon George, A.J. Roberts coming in as a freshman. But I think Chase Pine, as a redshirt senior, is going to have his best year at Pitt. And I think he's going to line up at middle linebacker, and I think he's going to quarterback that defense and do it really well. I think he could be a breakout player and maybe put up some of the best stats we've seen out of the middle linebacker position in quite some time. So that might be my pick. Roman, you've asked too many questions, so I'm not going to bring up your on-campus stadium question. Chugging down through here. Steven wants to know what happens first. Pitt football wins the ACC. Pitt basketball makes the Final Four. Or Nakia Griffin-Stewart catches a pass. Well, Nakia Griffin-Stewart was at one of those senior bowl games and got like a ton of props for his soft hands and the great catches he was making. And the entire world of Pitt Twitter just exploded at those reports. So, I guess that's already going to happen. Couple people on to Green 19 says Chris would be okay with you breaking news on the live feed. Keep the phone right where it is. Actually, I put the phone. It's under my basketball notes now, so now I can't even see if it turns on. And engineer Pitt, I guess it is, says we need real time recruiting updates. Chris. All right, let's see. Rolling through here, some more questions. General So's Chilling says I'll be really happy with the 20-win seasons after the last 2 years. Zach W. says, how many ACC teams will make the NCAA tournament this year? I don't know. I really don't. I couldn't tell you. It doesn't look strong. And people are talking about 4 or 5. People are, you guys are arguing with each other in the comments. It's kind of funny to me. People are talking about 4 or 5 teams from the conference getting in, and that sort of seems to be what it is. That's the kind of year that it is for the ACC. Now, you've still got a month to go, and some teams could really kind of emerge, but it doesn't look real strong beyond that. A bunch of people saying, if they can get to 20 wins, sign up for that. And I think you would too. I think it's a huge improvement over where this program was. This is my other thought that I've kind of had. I've been sort of tossing around that, I keep talking about where this program was or where they've come from or how far they've come and, so much better than it was 2 years ago. And it struck me the other day. I was like, oh, God, stop comparing it to 2 years ago. We're still not out of the shadow of 2 years ago yet. We're not out of the shadow of the 0-18 ACC season. We're not out of the shadow of the Kevin Stallings era yet. We're just not. It's not there. It still looms over this program. And another year, maybe 2 years, we'll get away from that. But we're not yet. And I think it's still fair to talk about where this program was 2 years ago and where it is now. If they can go 20-13 and get to the NIT with, that's a huge step, and if they can win 10 games in the ACC in the regular season, that's a huge step forward from where they were 2 years ago. And I think we can still talk about that because this roster is still recovering from the damage that was done to it 2 years ago. All right. I think, let me see. All right. You guys are all arguing with each other now. So, Timothy Fairley, is Drumgoole still nursing his injury? I got to assume that's that's the case. Yes, Ian Sowers, you're right. It is hysterical when Chris gets to this part. If you're listening to the podcast, people are just arguing with each other in the comments now. So it's turned into a message board thread. So I appreciate that we can start off talking about Pitt and Pitt-related things, and it turns into a message board thread where people are arguing with each other and complaining and attacking each other. Yeah, Timothy, fairly, I think Gerald Drumgoole still... Look, I don't know if he's 100% healthy or not. I think the injury set him back. I think it held back his development. He may still be physically limited by it, and if he's not, it's just a matter of his development not coming along as it would have if he'd been healthy all that time. So I think that's why he hasn't been part of the situation as much, why he hasn't been on the court as much and hasn't been in the rotation as much. And it's why on Sunday in the Miami game, you saw in the second half, the only rotations that happened, the only substitutions Jeff Capel did were at the center position. 1 through 4 played the entire game, or the entire second half, I should say. 1 through 4. Johnson, McGowan's, Tony and Champagny. And I can't argue with it. And Jeff Capel was asked after the game, why'd you stick with that rotation like that? And it was something I thought about during the game. I thought, wow, it's weird. Why is he doing this? And I was like, who the hell else is he going to put in? Excuse me. But who else is he going to put in? There's nobody else that they can play. With Ryan Murphy out for that game, they didn't even have another guard they could throw out there. So there was nothing else you could do. All right, it looks like we've been going for almost an hour here, and I really appreciate you guys in the comments. I mean, everybody who was here throughout the show, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much because you made this fun. I had things I was gonna talk about Pitt's history of scholarship kickers. That'd be boring. This was much more entertaining to have this conversation. So I'm glad we could do that interacting part. I think it makes the podcast a little more interesting, a little more lively, and you get to look at the site logo. And front page of the site, you see it right there, and photos. So how about that? We'll change photos. It won't all be photos from the Pitt, North Carolina football game, but we're figuring it out. We'll try and have some new technological gimmick or trick every time we do a new one of these live streams. But thanks so much for listening to the podcast. Make sure you check out the website, Panther-Lair.com. Thanks for watching the live stream here on our YouTube channel. It's youtube.com. Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, one word, youtube.com, Panther-Lair.com. And I really appreciate you checking it out. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Nicholas Temperio tells me the YouTube subs are way up. Thanks again to everybody. Make sure you get some Hemperor. It'll help you whenever your head coach's mentor retires from his job. Get some New Belgium Hemperor Pale Ale. Go to the website, go to the message boards. We'll be hanging out there, of course, all week. And we'll be back next Tuesday for another edition of the Panther-Lair Show. We'll do it again, 8:30. We'll have another live stream. And, of course, we'll release it as a podcast as well. So hopefully you can check in next week. I'm stalling while I try and figure out how to stop the stream. Wait, I think I figured it out. Hopefully you can check in next week for the stream and enjoy it with us. And like I say, thanks again for the conversation. Thanks again for checking in, and we will talk to you next week.